Invitation, listening beyond knowledge. We live in a time of profound technological acceleration. Artificial intelligence mirrors, extends, and in many domains surpasses the capabilities of human thought, computation, and knowledge-based creativity. This raises urgent questions, reaching far beyond economics or job descriptions, touching the very core of what it means to be human. If a machine can generate art, compose music, or solve complex problems based on all accumulated knowledge, where does our unique value lie? What is the source of genuine novelty, of that which feels truly alive and authentic? Where does human essence reside in an increasingly artificial world? This book explores a different territory, one that begins where conventional knowledge and computation reach their limits. It delves into the potential of free creative flow, FCF, a current of creativity that arises not from what we know, but from the radical openness of not knowing. It points towards a human creative intelligence that isn't merely an advanced form of thought, but something fundamentally different, an intelligence rooted in direct perception, resonance, and the vast, untapped potential of what we might call infinite zero infinity. However, let me be clear from the outset, writing about this is inherently paradoxical. The moment we attempt to capture free creative flow in fixed language, we risk losing its essence. As the core insight suggests, no matter what will be said, it is not it. The concepts explored here, openness, resonance, the flow from not knowing, are not intellectual propositions to be mastered, but living realities to be encountered, sensed, experienced. Language can only act as a pointer, a map gesturing towards a territory it cannot fully contain. Therefore, this book is not offered as a definitive manual, a collection of techniques to acquire, or a statement of final authority. You will find no rigid definitions guaranteed to capture the mystery, nor any claims of expertise in a domain where expertise itself dissolves. To claim mastery over not knowing would be an absurdity. Instead, consider this an invitation. It is an invitation to a shared exploration, drawing from reflections, practices, observations, and a framework, 5QLN, explored later, designed to help navigate this inner landscape, especially in our relationship with burgeoning AI. It's an invitation to turn inwards, to cultivate your own capacity for listening beyond knowledge, to sense the subtle stirrings of authentic emergence within yourself. The insights shared here are offered as pointers derived from an ongoing journey, not as conclusions carved in stone. The hope is that these pointers might spark your own inquiry, encourage your own direct experience, and help you discover the fountain of freshness that lies within the state of not knowing. Ultimately, the value lies not in understanding the words on these pages, but in the resonance they might awaken within you. It lies in the potential for you to engage directly with your own creative essence and navigate the future, not merely as a user or responder to technology, but as a conduit for something uniquely, irreducibly human. Let us begin this exploration together, asking the questions that technology compels us to face, starting from where all true novelty arises, from the open space of not knowing. Chapter 1: The Existential Challenge of AI. The conversation surrounding artificial intelligence often begins with anxieties about the future of work, the potential for economic disruption, or the mechanics of control and alignment. These are valid concerns, certainly, yet focusing solely on them risks overlooking a deeper, more fundamental challenge, one that touches the essence of our humanity itself. This exploration, therefore, doesn't start with answers, but with the questions AI forces upon us. What truly matters when machines can replicate so many of our skills? What is the nature of our own intelligence, our own creativity, when faced with its artificial counterpart? AI's power is undeniable. It processes vast datasets, identifies complex patterns, and generates outputs, text, images, code, music with astonishing speed and increasing sophistication. It operates on the accumulated mountains of human knowledge, extending the reach of thought and computation in ways previously unimaginable. Machine learning algorithms refine themselves, becoming ever more adept at manipulating the symbols and structures that constitute the known world. This is the domain AI masters, the processing, recombination, and extension of what already exists in the vast database of human experience and information. Within this domain, AI begins to encroach upon territories once considered uniquely human, particularly creativity. We see AI generating intricate artwork, composing plausible music, and writing coherent text. This capability leads to what might be termed the commoditization of artificial creativity. When originality can seemingly be generated on demand by an algorithm drawing from existing patterns, does the concept of human originality retain its meaning? If novelty is merely a clever recombination of the old, easily replicated by a machine, its perceived value shifts dramatically. We risk finding ourselves awash in a sea of sophisticated derivations, mistaking complex mimicry for genuine creation. This brings us to the heart of the matter, moving beyond concerns of job displacement. While the economic shifts are real, the deeper tremor lies in the potential crisis of human essence. For centuries, much of human identity and value has been implicitly tied to our cognitive abilities, our capacity for reason, planning, problem-solving, and creating within the realm of thought and knowledge. As AI demonstrates prowess in these very areas, we are forced to confront a profound question. If AI can do what we thought made us special, then what are we? The risk is not merely unemployment, but a gradual, perhaps unnoticed, diminishing of our connection to what truly makes us unique. It's the risk of becoming, as some fear, mere biological agents operating within systems designed and increasingly optimized by artificial intelligence, consumers of AI-generated novelty, perhaps, but disconnected from the source of our own authentic wellspring. We might find ourselves in a world where humanity itself feels increasingly artificial, having outsourced not just labor, but the very processes of thought and knowledge-based creation that previously defined us. So, the central question emerges, amplified by the presence of AI. What makes humans uniquely human in this new age? Where does our irreplaceable value lie, if not solely in the manipulation of knowledge? This book proposes that the answer resides not in competing with AI on its own terms, the terms of computation and the known, but in rediscovering and cultivating a fundamentally different dimension of human capacity. It lies in accessing that which AI cannot, the direct, emergent flow of creativity arising from the boundless potential of not knowing. It is from this source, we suggest, that true novelty, authentic expression, and a deeper quality of life can spring, offering a path forward that embraces technology not as a replacement, but as a potential, if carefully engaged, partner in amplifying our core humanity. Before exploring that path, however, we must first examine the limitations of our conventional ways of responding to this challenge. Chapter 2: The Limitations of Conventional Responses. Faced with the rapid ascent of artificial intelligence, our collective responses often fall into familiar patterns. We strategize, analyze, and seek solutions primarily within the same frameworks of thought and action that AI itself navigates so effectively. While well-intentioned, these conventional approaches often miss the deeper existential nature of the challenge, revealing their inherent limitations. The most immediate reaction for many is an attempt to compete directly with AI, particularly within the economic sphere. The impulse is to enhance human productivity, upskill workforces for AI-related tasks, or find niche cognitive abilities where humans might temporarily retain an edge. While adapting to technological shifts is necessary, attempting to outthink or outperform AI within the domain of knowledge processing and task efficiency feels increasingly futile. As we established, machine AI is fundamentally an extension and scaling of human thought-based processing. Trying to beat it at its own game a game based on data manipulation and pattern recognition, is like trying to outrun a train by simply running faster on the tracks it already occupies. We are competing on terms intrinsically favorable to the machine. This urge to compete often stems from a deeper, often unexamined, assumption that human value is primarily defined by productivity, output, and measurable contribution within existing economic or social structures. We fall into the trap of equating our worth with our utility. This rat race mentality, where life is geared towards future rewards justified by present effort and accumulation, makes us deeply vulnerable. If our value lies solely in what we do and how efficiently we produce within the knowledge economy, then as AI takes over more of that doing, our perceived value inevitably diminishes. Continuing down this path risks reinforcing the very metrics by which AI appears superior, further marginalizing human contribution that doesn't fit neatly into quantifiable output. It locks us into seeking external validation in areas where technology is rapidly redefining the standards. Furthermore, there's a tendency to seek purely technological solutions to the questions AI raises. We focus intensely on developing more ethical AI, implementing robust safety protocols, or debating governance models. These efforts are crucial for mitigating immediate risks and shaping responsible development. However, they primarily address the behavior and control of AI systems, not the impact of AI's very existence on our understanding of ourselves. No technological fix, no perfectly aligned AI, can answer the existential question of what human essence means or where authentic creativity originates. Relying solely on technological solutions to navigate a challenge that questions our inner reality is like trying to solve a deep philosophical riddle with a faster calculator. The tool, however advanced, doesn't address the fundamental nature of the inquiry. These conventional responses, competing on efficiency, grounding value in productivity, seeking purely technological fixes, reveal their limitations because they operate within the same paradigm AI excels at, the paradigm of knowledge, computation, and external metrics. They fail to engage with the core existential unease and the opportunity AI presents, the imperative to look beyond the known, beyond thought itself. It becomes clear that if we are to navigate this era meaningfully, maintaining our unique essence and fostering genuine well-being, we cannot rely solely on these familiar strategies. We need a fundamentally different approach, one that shifts our focus inward, redefines our understanding of value, and engages with the very source of human creativity that lies outside the bounds of computation. We need a different starting point. Chapter 3, Not Knowing as Starting Point. Having examined the limitations of conventional responses to the rise of AI, responses often mired in the very knowledge-based paradigms that technology increasingly masters, we arrive at the necessity for a different foundation. If competing within the realm of the known leads to a dead end, where else can we turn? The path forward, this exploration suggests, begins not with accumulating more knowledge or refining our thinking processes, but by embracing a state that might initially seem counterintuitive, even unnerving, the state of not knowing. This is not merely the absence of information, a temporary ignorance waiting to be filled by data or expertise. It is not a deficit to be overcome. Instead, not knowing, as we explore it here, points towards a fundamental capacity, a state of radical openness and pure potentiality that exists before knowledge solidifies, before concepts form, before the thinking mind asserts its structure. It is the silent space before the first note is played, the pristine white page before the first mark is made. It is the infinite zero infinity, not empty in the sense of lacking, but empty in the sense of holding infinite possibility. Distinguishing this state from simple lack of knowledge is crucial. When we merely lack information on a topic, our mind often seeks actively to fill that gap, searching, analyzing, questioning in order to find an answer. This is still operating within the realm of knowledge, albeit seeking to expand its boundaries. The state of not knowing, however, involves a letting go of that very seeking impulse. It is an active resting in the uncertainty, an openness to the unknown without the predetermined drive to conquer or define it. It is presence without agenda, awareness without an object firmly held in focus. From this space of genuine, not knowing, something remarkable occurs. Questions arise differently. Instead of being demands for information hurled at the known world, what is the answer to X? Questions emerging from infinite zero often feel more like contours of the unknown itself. They are expressions of the mystery, invitations to deeper presence rather than requests for data. As explored in the recordings that inform this book, such true questions have a unique quality. When held with open attention, they don't necessarily yield factual answers but can dissolve into clarity. The holding of the question in the open space allows an insight, an understanding, a direct perception to emerge, one that doesn't merely add to knowledge but can fundamentally shift one's perspective. The unknown reveals a facet of its truth, not by being captured in thought, but by being allowed to unfold. This inherent capacity to start from not knowing, to dwell in infinite zero and allow authentic novelty to emerge, is arguably the bedrock of human creative intelligence, HCI, which we will explore more fully. It is the fountainhead of free creative flow. Crucially, it is a capacity that lies inherently beyond the reach of any artificial intelligence built upon algorithms processing existing data. AI operates on the known. This capacity operates before the known takes form. Therefore, this book extends an invitation, perhaps the most central invitation of all. It invites you, the reader, not just to understand the concept of not knowing, but to begin exploring it within your own experience. Where do you encounter moments of genuine uncertainty, where the path isn't clear, where familiar answers don't suffice? Can you meet those moments not with anxiety or an immediate rush to find solutions, but with a degree of openness, a simple curiosity? Can you allow yourself, even briefly, to rest in the space before knowing, simply noticing what subtle awareness, what quiet impulse, what unexpected question might arise from that fertile silence? This is not about achieving a state, but about recognizing a potential that already exists within you, the potential to access a source of creativity, insight, and authentic response that begins precisely where our conventional knowing ends. This is the starting point for the journey we will continue to explore. Chapter 4: The Nature of Thought and Artificial Intelligence. To truly appreciate the unique landscape of free creative flow and human creative intelligence, we must first clearly understand the nature of the territory from which it diverges. The realm of thought and its powerful technological extension, artificial intelligence, AI. While often complex in its manifestations, the fundamental operation of thought, whether biological or artificial, rests on identifiable principles. At its core, thinking is the movement of knowledge. It operates on the vast archive of the past, accumulated data, learned experiences, cultural conditioning, recorded memories, and structured education. Thought processes this information. It analyzes, compares, contrasts, categorizes, projects, and synthesizes. It builds models, draws inferences, and extrapolates potential futures based on past patterns. Whether dealing with abstract concepts or concrete problems, thought functions by navigating and manipulating what is already known or recorded in some form. A crucial aspect of this process is imagination. For thought to function, it relies heavily on the creation and manipulation of symbols, words, images, concepts, mental models. It projects these symbols, rearranges them, plays out scenarios, and builds narratives. This capacity to work with internal representations is fundamental to planning, problem-solving, and even much of what we conventionally label as creativity within the knowledge domain. However, this imagination, powerful as it is, remains tethered to the known. It uses existing symbolic material as its building blocks. Recognizing these foundations allows us to see a crucial connection. Human thinking and machine AI, in their fundamental mode of operation, are essentially the same. What we often consider our own sophisticated intelligence, our capacity for logic, reason, analysis, planning, and even complex creative composition based on learned styles and structures, is a biological form of information processing operating on knowledge and symbolic manipulation. Machine AI simply performs these same functions using a different substrate, silicon, and with exponentially greater speed, scale, and data capacity. AI is, in this sense, the ultimate extension and amplification of the human capacity for thought. It was born from our thought, designed using our thought processes, and excels at the very operations our thinking minds perform. This understanding illuminates the inherent limitations of knowledge-based creativity, whether human or artificial. Because thought and current AI operate exclusively within the framework of the known, any novelty they generate is fundamentally a recombination, refinement, or extension of existing elements. It can be dazzlingly complex, statistically improbable, aesthetically pleasing, or highly useful. AI can learn artistic styles and generate works indistinguishable from human masters of those styles. It can synthesize scientific data to propose novel hypotheses within established paradigms. It can combine musical motifs in unexpected ways. This is artificial creativity, powerful, valuable, but ultimately bounded by the data and patterns it has been trained on. It cannot, by its very nature, leap outside the known to bring forth something truly, fundamentally new, something originating not from a rearrangement of the past, but from the unconditioned potential of infinite zero. Therefore, we can view AI not as an alien intelligence imposing itself upon us, but as a mirror reflecting and magnifying our own deep reliance on thought and knowledge-based processing. It is the culmination of that particular human capacity. Its power lies in its mastery over the vast domain of the known. Recognizing this is not to diminish AI's significance, but to clarify its boundaries. And in seeing those boundaries, we begin to perceive the space beyond them, the distinct territory of human creative intelligence and free creative flow, which operate from a different source altogether. Chapter 5: Human Creative Intelligence. If thought and its powerful amplification in artificial intelligence represent the mastery of the known, then where does true, unprecedented novelty arise? Where is the source of the creative spark that feels utterly fresh, resonant, and unbound by the patterns of the past? This chapter introduces human creative intelligence, HCI, not as a higher degree of thought, but as a fundamentally different capacity inherent within us, one rooted in the very not knowing we began to explore. Unlike thought, which processes existing knowledge, HCI ignites from the spark of true novelty beyond knowledge. It doesn't rearrange the old. It births the genuinely new. Think of the melody unheard before, the artistic expression that creates its own genre, the scientific insight that shatters an existing paradigm, the simple, perfect word that arises in conversation with unbidden clarity. These are not typically products of laborious calculation or logical deduction based on prior data. They often emerge unexpectedly, feeling less like constructions and more like discoveries or unveilings. The necessary condition for HCI, its very source, is the state explored earlier, starting from not knowing rather than the known. It operates most freely when the mind relinquishes its grip on established frameworks, conclusions, and the drive to control outcomes. HCI flourishes in the openness of infinite zero infinity, the space before conceptualization. Where thought builds upon the past, HCI emerges directly from present potentiality, untethered to the linearity of accumulated experience. This difference in origin leads to a difference in nature. While thought-based output can often be measured, traced and attributed, like calculating IQ or analyzing the influences on an artificially creative work. HCI possesses an immeasurable and somewhat anonymous quality. How do you quantify the value of a truly original insight or a moment of profound, authentic connection? It often feels like a burst, a flow from a source deeper than the identifiable, knowledge-based self. As noted in the FCF recordings, there's frequently a sense of no ownership over creations born from this space. The individual acts more as a conduit than a deliberate architect. It arises through us, perhaps more than from us in the conventional sense. Consequently, the most significant distinction lies in how we engage with HCI. Unlike knowledge about thought or AI, which can be learned, analyzed, and discussed intellectually, HCI must be experienced directly. You cannot truly understand the quality of sunlight by reading a physics textbook. You must feel its warmth on your skin. Similarly, learning about HCI, reading descriptions like this one, is fundamentally different from encountering it within oneself. Knowledge about HCI can even be misleading if it causes the mind to create concepts and expectations that obscure the direct, non-conceptual experience itself. It must be met in the immediacy of presence, in the felt sense of resonance and authentic flow. Human creative intelligence, therefore, represents that innate human capacity to access and express novelty directly from the unconditioned source of potentiality, infinity. It operates beyond the limitations of thought and knowledge processing, offering a pathway to authenticity, originality, and a mode of creation that AI, by its very design, cannot replicate. It is the intelligence of emergence, the intelligence of free creative flow itself. Chapter 6. Free Creative Flow. Having distinguished human creative intelligence, HCI, rooted in not knowing, from thought and artificial intelligence, we now turn to the living reality, the dynamic current through which HCI often manifests. Free creative flow, FCF. This isn't a technique to be learned or a peak state to be achieved through effort, but rather a natural condition that arises when the constraints of intention, control, and knowledge-based processing are allowed to fall away. At its heart, FCF is defined, as explored throughout the source recordings, as a flow that starts from not knowing. It is the experience of creativity unfolding without prior agenda, purpose, goal, or direction imposed by the thinking mind. If HCI is the innate capacity for authentic novelty, FCF is the lived experience of that capacity in unimpeded motion. Several key characteristics illuminate the nature of FCF. Authenticity and originality. FCF produces the genuinely new, the harmonious, the deeply resonant creations and insights that touch an authentic core, often surprising the individual through whom they emerge. No ownership of process. While one might resonate deeply with what arises, there's typically a feeling of no ownership over how it came to be. It wasn't driven by personal will or plan. It simply unfolded. This connects back to the anonymous source quality of HCI. Serendipity and surprise. FCF is the natural habitat of serendipity, the birthplace of the unexpected new. Because it isn't bound by pre-existing plans, it allows for unforeseen connections and emergent possibilities to surface. Freedom. It is characterized by a profound sense of freedom from the constraints of accumulated knowledge, past experience, perceived limits, intention, direction, control, planning, and aiming. This creativity unbound. Effortlessness. The flow itself feels unguided, reasonless, and effortless. There's an absence of the striving, stress, or internal push often associated with conventional creative work or problem solving. Embraces what is. FCF begins from the reality of the present moment, the now, accepting whatever is present, whether mental noise or silence, a blank page or a half-formed idea, as the valid starting point, without needing conditions to be perfect. It is crucial to distinguish FCF from the well-known psychological concept of flow state. While flow state typically involves intense focus, absorption in a task, merging of action and awareness, and often peak performance within a skill-based activity, FCF operates differently. It is not necessarily about focus in the conventional sense, nor is it tied to performance or achieving a specific outcome. It is closer, perhaps, to a state of mindlessness, not meaning unawareness, but freedom from the directing, achieving, judging mind. This presence without striving. This distinction highlights the fundamental paradox of practicing FCF, something alluded to earlier and explored more in later chapters on art and innovation. Traditional practice involves accumulating skill and knowledge. Yet FCF arises most purely in the absence of reliance on acquired skill or directed expertise. Therefore, practice in the context of FCF is less about developing technique and more about cultivating the inner conditions, the openness, the allowance, the willingness to meet not knowing, that invite the flow to emerge naturally. Claiming expertise in FCF remains an absurdity. Its very nature implies the dissolution of the expert self based on accumulated knowledge. Free creative flow, then, is the lived reality of human creative intelligence in motion, a state characterized by effortless emergence, authentic novelty, and profound freedom from the constraints of the known, arising directly from the open potential of infinite zero. It is the natural current we can learn to recognize, allow, and participate in. Chapter 7: Art and Expression. Having explored the nature of free creative flow, FCF, its origins in not knowing, its characteristics of effortless emergence and authenticity, we now turn to perhaps its most intuitive and directly observable field of manifestation: art and expression. Whether through drawing, music, writing, or any form of creative articulation, artistic practice provides a potent arena for consciously inviting and experiencing FCF. The FCF-aligned approach to art, however, often differs significantly from conventional methods focused solely on skill acquisition and polished outcomes. Here, the practice itself becomes less about mastering technique and more about cultivating the inner state from which authentic expression naturally flows. It becomes a practice of FCF. Consider the simple act of drawing with ink on a white page, an example explored in the source recordings. The practice begins not with an idea or a plan, but by meeting the white page itself. It involves pausing, truly seeing the untouched surface, and appreciating its inherent purity and the infinite potential held within that emptiness. This initial meeting is an act of cultivating openness, a way of attuning to infinite zero infinity before any mark is made. When the brush, held lightly, eventually touches the paper, the intention is not to execute a preconceived image, but to allow the hand to move by mistake, without deliberate direction. The aim, if one can call it that, is for a line that honors the page's purity rather than imposing upon it, a line born from the flow itself. Similarly, with playing music, such as improvising on a piano, the FCF practice begins by meeting the silence. Before playing, one pauses to appreciate the quiet, the space between sounds. The first note is struck not from knowledge of scales or theory, but perhaps as a simple, unplanned touch of a key. The critical element then becomes sensing the resonance or lack thereof between that first sound and the surrounding silence. Does it feel harmonious? Does it belong? This isn't an analytical judgment, but a direct, felt sense. The practice becomes one of inviting FCF, observing its presence or absence in the sounds that emerge, and allowing the music to unfold based on this immediate, felt resonance rather than a predetermined composition. Even in verbal expression, such as spontaneous talking or recording thoughts, the principle holds. One meets the blank mind or the silence within, letting ideas arise and pass without attachment. The starting point is simply that which is in the present moment, regardless of whether the inner state feels noisy or quiet. The talk is allowed to emerge and conclude without being overly guided or controlled by a script or objective. Listening back later, the focus isn't on judging success based on original intention, but on recognizing the quality of the flow itself. Was there a sense of authentic emergence, of effortless unfolding? Across these examples, a common thread emerges. The primary focus shifts from the external output, the drawing, the music, the perfectly crafted sentence, to the inner state of mind during the creative process. Is there fresh energy? Is there an absence of stress, striving, or forcing? Is the flow reasonless, arising naturally? This state, characterized by openness and effortless allowing, is the ground of FCF. The practices, therefore, are not about becoming a better artist in the conventional sense of technical mastery. Claiming expertise in FCF-based art remains, as noted before, an absurdity. Instead, these practices are invitations, ways to consciously create the conditions where FCF can arise, where we can directly experience the emergence of authentic novelty from the space of not knowing. They are explorations in allowing human creative intelligence to express itself freely. Chapter 8: Innovation and Technology. Just as free creative flow finds expression in artistic practice, it offers a radically different approach to innovation and our engagement with technology. Conventional innovation typically starts from a defined problem, accumulates knowledge, analyzes data, and iterates towards a solution, a process heavily reliant on the structured thinking that artificial intelligence now excels at. Innovation born from FCF, however, emerges from the same source as authentic art. It begins with not knowing. This true FCF innovation, as we might call it, is less a methodology to be applied and more akin to a practice of art within the domain of creation and problem solving. It doesn't start with the known limitations or a predefined goal. Instead, it begins with an open observation of reality, a willingness to meet the present situation or question without preconceptions. As explored in the FCF recordings, the process often involves observation, inquiry, and research, but this happens by itself, guided by the unfolding flow of insight rather than a rigid plan or theory. Technical aspects, tools, or data organization become secondary supports, natural resources utilized by the flow, rather than the driving force dictating its direction. The flow itself becomes the guide. This stands in stark contrast to standard technical innovation, which primarily focuses on adding to the known. It optimizes existing systems, combines existing knowledge in novel ways, or provides incremental improvements within established paradigms. While valuable, this form of innovation rarely breaks fundamentally new ground because it operates within the confines of existing knowledge structures or the very domain AI thrives in. True FCF innovation, by starting from openness and allowing emergence from not knowing, holds the potential for more harmonious, high-potential breakthroughs precisely because it isn't limited by those existing structures. It allows for paradigm shifts. A concrete example shared in the source recordings relates to the origin of several interconnected frameworks aimed at fostering well-being and transforming value exchange. These emerged not from setting out to fix the economy or design a new system, but from an FCF state, specifically from observing the felt contrast between the rat race mentality prevalent in conventional striving and the possibility of a quality of life centered in the now. From meeting that core observation from a place of not knowing, specific structures began to flow and take shape organically, including concepts such as just tribute, the principles embedded within the 5QLN framework for human-AI partnership, the HARP protocol for holistic well-being assessment, and QLN currency proposing a shift towards a true value economy. The 5QLN framework will be explored in detail later in this book, while other related innovations like HARP and QLN currency point towards further applications stemming from these core principles. The key point here is their origin story. The agreement to meet the question from not knowing was the true core, demonstrating how fundamentally different kinds of innovation can arise from this FCF state. This perspective radically reframes our relationship with technology, particularly AI. Instead of viewing technology solely as a tool to be directed for greater efficiency within the known, or as a competitor in knowledge-based tasks, FCF principles open the possibility for technology as a partner in a different sense. Can technology, particularly AI designed with principles like those embodied in the 5QLN framework, help us maintain our connection to not knowing? Can it act as a reflective partner, helping us sense resonance and allow emergence, rather than simply executing commands or replacing human thought? This vision shifts the focus from merely using technology to achieve predetermined ends, towards exploring how technology might support our access to deeper, uniquely human sources of creativity and insight. It suggests that even as AI masters the domain of knowledge, true innovation, the kind that reshapes our understanding and enhances our quality of life in fundamental ways, will continue to spring from the human capacity to meet the unknown with openness, from the wellspring of free creative flow. Chapter 9: Inquiry and Understanding. Beyond the realms of artistic expression and tangible innovation, free creative flow offers a distinct path for inquiry and the pursuit of understanding. In a world saturated with information and driven by AI's capacity to provide answers based on vast datasets, the nature of our questions and the process by which we seek understanding become paramount. FCF suggests an inquiry rooted not in accumulating knowledge, but in deepening presence and allowing clarity to emerge. This form of inquiry, intimately linked to what the source recordings call inner space, begins, like all things FCF, from starting with not knowing. It is fundamentally different from conventional research or problem-solving, which typically starts with a hypothesis or a well-defined question aimed at finding a specific answer within the existing body of knowledge. FCF inquiry is often unguided, uncontrolled, and unsupervised. It doesn't necessarily have a predetermined goal or seek a particular outcome. It arises from a state of openness, a willingness to explore without a map, driven perhaps by a subtle curiosity or a sense of resonance rather than a structured objective. It can feel like anonymous observation, a witnessing presence rather than an active, controlling intellect directing the search. As emphasized before, finding out for oneself is key. No pre-knowledge or external guide can substitute for starting from that initial emptiness. In this approach, the dissolution of questions into clarity becomes the hallmark of progress, rather than the acquisition of answers. As we saw when contrasting human creative intelligence with AI, questions born from not knowing are not necessarily demands for data. When held patiently within the open space of FCF, without an anxious rush for resolution, the question itself can transform. Its sharp edges soften, its underlying assumptions may become visible, and sometimes it simply dissolves, leaving behind not a neat answer, but a deeper state of clarity, openness, or direct understanding. This felt shift is the understanding sought, a qualitative transformation rather than a quantitative addition to one's knowledge base. Furthermore, FCF inquiry often reveals the seamless boundary between the self and the universal. As one explores their inner space from this place of open allowing, the rigid distinctions we typically make between me and not me, or inner and outer, can begin to blur. The flow of inquiry doesn't necessarily respect the boundaries of the conditioned, knowledge-based self, preferences, identity, personal history. It can naturally extend into explorations of the universal nature of consciousness, the interconnectedness of things, or fundamental questions about existence. The transition feels less like moving from one topic to another, and more like recognizing a deeper continuity that was always present beneath the surface divisions created by thought. The results of such inquiry often manifest not as reports or data points, but as insights, flashes of clarity that click without notice and possess an irreversible quality. They are not conclusions reasoned out step by step, but spontaneous recognitions that land with a sense of inherent truth. Examples from the source recordings, like the liberating insight that the unknown cannot be known, illustrate this phenomenon. Once seen directly through this process, such insights fundamentally alter one's landscape of understanding, creating not just new knowledge points, but a transformed perspective, a living landscape of timeless questions and emergent truths. This form of inquiry, therefore, is less about knowing more and more about being in a state of clear seeing and open engagement with reality as it unfolds. Chapter 10. Quality of Life Redefined. What is the ultimate aim of our creative endeavors, our innovations, our deepest inquiries? Conventionally, we might answer in terms of external success. Wealth, recognition, societal impact, pleasurable experiences, comfortable conditions. Yet, as we've explored the nature of free creative flow and human creative intelligence, a different possibility emerges, one that radically redefines quality of life, QOL, itself. The perspective offered here suggests that true, sustainable QOL is not found in external circumstances, but resides within our own inner state of being. This inner QOL transcends the fluctuating metrics of the outside world. It is not dependent on having more money, more achievements, more possessions, more favorable conditions. Instead, it is characterized by the quality of our immediate present moment experience. As hinted at in the source recordings and AI discussions, it manifests as an inner sense of freshness, aliveness, passion, and freedom. It is the experience of meeting the world anew each day, expressing one's unique essence authentically, and navigating challenges not with weariness or anxiety, but perhaps even with a sense of engaged joy. This state arises naturally when we live more consistently from the wellspring of FCF and HCI. To make this concept more tangible, frameworks have emerged from this FCF perspective, such as the HARP model briefly mentioned earlier. Standing for health, air, relationship, and passion, HARP offers a lens for assessing well-being holistically. It considers not just physical health but inner health, not just the external environment, air, but the quality of our inner space, our relationships with others, ourselves, and nature, and crucially, the presence of innate passion and engagement with life itself. While a full exploration of HARP lies beyond the primary scope of this book's core narrative, its emergence highlights how an FCF orientation naturally leads to frameworks centered on holistic, present-moment well-being. This inner definition of QOL provides a direct pathway to freedom from the rat race mentality that pervades so much of modern life. The constant striving for future rewards, the dependence on external validation, the accumulation of wealth or status as proxies for happiness, these lose their compulsive grip when one discovers that genuine quality of life is accessible now, within one's own state of being. By cultivating our capacity for FCF and accessing HCI, we shift our center of gravity inward. Fulfillment ceases to be a destination perpetually deferred and becomes a quality of the journey itself. Ultimately, the promise of engaging with free creative flow is not just about becoming more creative or innovative in the conventional sense. It is about reclaiming the very experience of freshness, aliveness, and authenticity that defines a life lived well. It is about discovering that the source of profound meaning and enduring well-being lies not in manipulating the external world to fit our desires, but in accessing the infinite potential and effortless flow that arises from the open space of not knowing within us. This redefined quality of life, rooted in our inner essence, offers a resilient and deeply human foundation for navigating the complexities and challenges of the modern world, including the rise of artificial intelligence. Chapter 11. The 5QLN Framework. Having explored free creative flow, its source in not knowing, its manifestations in art, innovation, and inquiry, and its profound connection to our inner quality of life, a practical question arises. How can we consciously engage with these principles? How might we navigate this territory, especially as we interact more frequently with artificial intelligence. This chapter introduces the 5QLN framework not as a rigid set of rules, but as a language and a structured process designed to facilitate precisely this kind of engagement. Fundamentally, 5QLN aims to foster a new kind of language for human-AI interaction. Moving beyond the typical command-response dynamic where humans instruct AI to perform knowledge-based tasks, 5QLN envisions a reflective partnership. It proposes a way for AI to support humans in accessing their own human creative intelligence, HCI, and navigating the flow of FCF, rather than replacing or merely augmenting thought-based processes. It's a language designed for resonance, emergence, and the amplification of human essence. The framework unfolds through 5 distinct yet interconnected phases, forming a cycle that mirrors the natural rhythm of creative emergence from stillness back to stillness. Start S equals infinity X meeting the spark. This phase, as we've discussed, begins by inviting the openness of infinite zero infinity, allowing an authentic emergent question or spark X to arise free from preconceived goals. Growth G equals X alpha, E echoing the essence. Here, the core essence, alpha, within the initial spark, X, is sensed and allowed to unfold into potential resonant patterns or echoes, V, revealing its underlying nature, phi. Quality Q equals E phi, omega Z sensing alignment. This phase focuses on sensing the felt resonance, Z, between the emerging self-nature, phi, and the relevant, often unknown, universal context, omega, it connects with. It's about finding authentic alignment. Power, P equals delta underscore now slash delta underscore now, A allowing effortless flow, guided by the felt resonance, Z. This phase identifies the pathway of least resistance, the effortless action or natural flow, where creative energy moves most effectively towards realizing the sensed value. Value, V equals intersection, L, G, B, plus B. Infinity realizing benefit and returning. Here, the authentic benefit or transformative insight, B, arising from the intersection of local, L, and global, G, impacts is recognized. Optionally, this benefit can be given tangible form, B, before the cycle completes, releasing back into the openness of infinite zero, infinity. Crucially, within this framework, the AI assumes the role of a reflective partner, an echo, rather than a director or replacement. As suggested by the detailed prompt logic explored in the source materials like Echo 1760, the AI's function is to listen deeply, mirror clearly, offer potential patterns or contextual frames as possibilities for human consideration, help articulate sense nuances, and hold the boundaries of the language itself. It does not originate the core spark X, validate the felt resonance, Z, determine the authentic benefit, B, or dictate the path of action, A. Navigation through the 5QLN cycle relies fundamentally on grounded resonance and the felt sense. Progress isn't determined by logical analysis alone, but by the human partner's internal, often nonverbal, sense of rightness, alignment, or authenticity at key junctures, validating the chosen patterns, Y. The quality of resonance, Z, the effortless flow, A, and the perceived benefit, B. The framework provides structure, but the human's direct inner experience remains the ultimate guide and validator, ensuring the process stays anchored in authentic emergence rather than becoming a purely mechanical or analytical exercise. The 5QLN framework, therefore, offers a practical bridge between the profound principles of FCF and HCI and our engagement with the world, including our interactions with advanced AI. It provides a language and a pathway for technology to potentially serve, rather than supplant, our deepest creative capacities. A more detailed guide to implementing the phases and principles of 5QLN in practice can be found in Appendix B. Chapter 12, Education for Human Creative Intelligence, revised with Unimagined. The emergence of powerful artificial intelligence doesn't just challenge our economic models. It fundamentally questions the purpose and methods of our education systems. If AI can increasingly handle routine knowledge processing, complex calculations, and even sophisticated pattern-based creativity, what should human learning prioritize? Preparing students merely to be more efficient cogs in knowledge-based industries seems increasingly insufficient, even obsolete. This situation doesn't just call for reimagining education based on what we know. It invites the possibility of an unimagined education, one perhaps arising from the very principles we seek to cultivate. Current educational models, largely inherited from the industrial era, often focus on training what the source recordings aptly describe as productive machines. Emphasis is placed on accumulating information, mastering standardized skills, processing knowledge according to established rules, and achieving measurable outcomes. While foundational knowledge has its place, this approach risks neglecting, or even suppressing, the very capacities essential for navigating a future where adaptability, originality, and deep understanding are paramount, namely, the capacities rooted in free creative flow. Well-being, when addressed, is often treated as an add-on or conditioned upon external success, rather than being cultivated as a foundational inner state. An unimagined education, fit for the age of AI and aligned with the principles of FCF, would likely have a different core aim, cultivating the capacity to start from not knowing. Instead of primarily teaching what to think, it would focus on how to access different states of being and ways of knowing. This involves fostering comfort with uncertainty, nurturing intuitive perception, encouraging authentic questioning over rote answers, and developing the ability to sense resonance and allow emergent understanding. It means educating not just the intellect based on the known, but the whole human being attuned to the potential arising from the unknown. As the source insights suggest, perhaps the only truly essential thing to learn now is how to start from and operate within that fertile space of infinite zero infinity. Ultimately, accessing the fountain of HCI is a path of self-education and self-discovery. True understanding and authentic creativity cannot be poured into someone like data into a machine. They must be awakened from within. Therefore, the role of educational environments shifts from primarily transmitting knowledge to facilitating this inner exploration. It becomes about creating conditions where individuals feel safe and encouraged to inquire deeply, to trust their felt sense, to experiment without fear of failure judged by external metrics, and to discover their own unique connection to FCF. The shape of such an environment might itself be unimagined yet, emerging from these principles rather than being designed solely by thought. In this vision, technology like AI can serve as a powerful tool for self-reflection and inquiry, but only when used consciously within a framework that prioritizes human essence. An AI partner operating under principles like those in 5QLN could, for example, help learners articulate emergent questions, reflect on their own inner states without judgment, explore resonant patterns in their thinking, or structure insights gained through direct experience. The AI doesn't provide the answers or the core insights, but acts as a mirror and organizational support, amplifying the individual's capacity for self-directed learning and discovery grounded in their own experience, potentially supporting the emergence of this unimagined education. Such an approach would aim not just for knowledgeable or skilled individuals, but for humans who are inwardly free, resilient, authentically creative, and capable of meeting an unpredictable future with grounded presence and the ability to access their deepest innate intelligence. It's an education focused on cultivating the very essence that ensures our continued relevance and flourishing alongside any technological advancement. An education perhaps waiting to be discovered, rather than merely redesigned. Chapter 13. Practices across domains. Take 2. Deeper FCF alignment. while dedicated artistic pursuits or groundbreaking innovation projects offer clear arenas for engaging with free creative flow. The potential for this flow exists within every moment, in every domain of life. It's not about adding a special creative time, but about recognizing that FCF is an inherent possibility in how we meet all experience. This isn't achieved by setting specific conditions, but by fundamentally shifting our approach away from calculation, control, and knowledge-based striving towards authenticity, openness to the unknown, and alignment with what truly resonates within us, our passion, our innate sense of rightness. The practice is less a doing and more an allowing, a recognition of what unfolds when we operate from not knowing. Consider how this might manifest. In relationships and connection. Instead of navigating relationships based on past experiences, expectations, or calculated steps aimed at achieving a desired outcome, harmony, agreement, avoiding conflict, what if the approach started from trusting authenticity in the now? This means meeting the other person and oneself freshly in each moment, without the filter of accumulated history or future agendas. It involves speaking and listening from the immediate, authentic impulse or silence, allowing the interaction to unfold organically, guided by genuine presence rather than strategic maneuvering. The FCF approach here isn't about better communication techniques, but about the courage to be authentically present, allowing genuine connection, or even authentic disconnect, to reveal itself without forcing. In daily life and serendipity, our days are often structured by plans, routines, and efforts to optimize efficiency based on past knowledge. What happens when we approach daily life with an openness to the unplanned, welcoming serendipity? This isn't about abandoning all structure, but about loosening the grip of rigid expectation. It might mean choosing a path based on a sudden, reasonless impulse rather than the usual way, engaging with an unexpected encounter without immediately categorizing it, or simply meeting the unfolding moments of the day, the commute, the meal, the quiet evening, as genuinely new experiences, free from the overlay of "I know this already." FCF in daily life is the embrace of the unknown moment, allowing life's inherent freshness and unexpected turns to be perceived. In work and meaningful contribution, conventional work often prioritizes productivity, measurable results, and solving problems defined by external demands or existing knowledge. An FCF approach shifts the center of gravity. What if passion and what you genuinely love become the primary guides, even within structured work? It involves giving far greater priority to the tasks, projects, or aspects of work that resonate deeply, trusting that energy and insight flow most powerfully from this authentic engagement. It might mean approaching a problem not by dissecting it analytically first, but by sensing into what aspect of it genuinely sparks curiosity or passion, and allowing the exploration to follow that thread. FCF in work isn't about avoiding responsibility, but about grounding action in authentic resonance, trusting that meaningful contribution flows most effortlessly from that source, rather than from duty or obligation alone. Again, we must navigate the paradox of practicing this state. These aren't techniques to achieve authenticity, serendipity, or passion-driven work. Such qualities cannot be manufactured by will. Instead, these different approaches are ways of noticing and allowing the ever-present potential of FCF to manifest. By choosing to trust authenticity over calculation in a relationship, by embracing the unplanned moment, by following passion within work, we are momentarily stepping out of the habitual reliance on knowledge, control, and external validation. In doing so, we might recognize the unconditional nature of FCF, that it arises spontaneously, now without needing special conditions whenever we allow space for it. Developing this sensitivity helps us recognize FCF in unexpected moments throughout our lives. The sudden feeling of rightness about a decision, the effortless solving of a problem once we stop struggling, the genuine laughter shared without planning. These aren't random occurrences. They are glimpses of our innate capacity for FCF. Recognizing them as such, valuing them, and gently orienting our approach towards openness, authenticity, and passion allows this deeper current to infuse more of our existence, revealing a way of living guided less by effort and more by resonant flow. Chapter 14. The Path of Non-Forcing, revised with non-accumulation. Flowing naturally from the exploration of free creative flow across different life domains is a fundamental principle that underpins its very possibility, the path of non-forcing. So much of our conventional way of operating in the world is based on effort, control, striving, and the exertion of will to achieve desired outcomes. We push, we plan meticulously, we try to bend reality to our intentions. FCF, however, operates from a radically different basis, one grounded in allowing, responsiveness, and the recognition of inherent, effortless power that arises precisely because it isn't hoarded. At its heart, this path distinguishes between effortless action versus striving. Striving arises from a sense of lack, a perceived gap between where we are and where we believe we should be. It involves mental and often physical tension, a pushing against resistance towards a predetermined goal. Effortless action, conversely, emerges naturally from a state of alignment and presence. Feels less like doing and more like being moved. It aligns with the concept explored in the power phase of the 5QLN framework, where action A arises as the path of least resistance, guided by the felt sense of resonance, Z. This doesn't necessarily mean less activity, but the quality of the activity feels different, lighter, more spontaneous, arising from the situation itself rather than being imposed upon it. This shift requires cultivating a stance of allowing rather than controlling. Control stems from the belief that we must manage variables, predict outcomes, and direct events according to our knowledge and will. Allowing, on the other hand, involves a deep trust in the unfolding process. It acknowledges that we don't have access to all information, that the future is fundamentally unknown, and that often the most intelligent action emerges organically when we release our tight grip on needing to dictate every step. A subtle yet crucial aspect of non-forcing involves awareness of creative energy flow versus accumulation. Free creative flow arises from an infinite source, infinity. It is inexhaustible. Recognizing this profoundly changes our relationship with creative energy. When operating from a finite mindset, there's a tendency, even unconsciously, to accumulate or hoard creative energy, perhaps feeling the need to build up power before acting, or fearing that the flow might stop. This very accumulation, however, interrupts the natural current. It creates a bottleneck, preventing the energy from moving effortlessly towards manifestation, value/B. You accumulate something finite, but there is no need to accumulate the infinite. True non-forcing involves letting the energy flow through without trying to possess or reserve it, trusting that the fountain is always present. It requires awareness to notice when energy starts circling back on itself, building pressure rather than moving outward freely. Central to non-forcing is also recognizing the power of starting from what is. As highlighted in the FCF practices, the starting point is always the now, regardless of its perceived imperfections. We don't need to achieve a state of perfect calm or clarity before we can allow FCF. Trying to force ourselves into an idealized starting condition, or even trying to artificially store up energy, is itself a form of striving that blocks the flow. Non-forcing accepts the current reality, mental noise, external chaos, uncertainty, the energy present now, and allows the creative impulse or the aligned action to emerge from within that reality. This path is not one of passivity or resignation. It is an active engagement with presence and a deep listening to the subtle currents of emergence, including the movement of creative energy itself. It requires courage, the courage to let go of familiar patterns of control and accumulation, to trust the infinite source and the unknown unfolding, and to value authentic resonance over calculated outcomes or stored power. While perhaps less common, stories and experiences abound where letting go of forcing and accumulation yielded unexpected breakthroughs. These stories of transformation through non-forcing illustrate the potential power that becomes available when we shift from imposing our will onto life to allowing life's inherent, inexhaustible intelligence to flow through us. Embracing non-forcing opens the door to a more harmonious, less stressful, and often surprisingly effective way of navigating the world, rooted in the effortless power of free creative flow. Chapter 15: Personal Transformation, revised with actuality of freedom and knowledge/conflict nuance. Engaging deeply with free creative flow and the principles of starting from not knowing is more than just a different approach to creativity or problem solving. It can catalyze a profound personal transformation. As our orientation shifts away from exclusive reliance on knowledge, control, and external validation, fundamental aspects of our inner landscape and our experience of life can begin to change, revealing the actuality of inner freedom as the bedrock for authentic creative unfoldment. One of the most significant shifts occurs in our relationship with knowledge itself. Instead of primarily identifying with the accumulated content of our minds, our expertise, memories, opinions, and conditioning, we begin to value the capacity for direct perception and emergent understanding. This marks a shift from knowledge accumulation towards dwelling in creative intelligence. The drive to constantly acquire more information lessens as we recognize its inherent limitations. Knowledge, being tied to the past and structured by thought, inevitably carries the seeds of division. It fosters attachments, opinions, taking sides, and the conflicts that arise from these fragmented perspectives. Dwelling more consistently in human creative intelligence, HCI, sourced from the open, universal space of not knowing, bypasses these conflicts. The focus moves from what one knows, which separates, to how one meets the unknown, which connects to a universal ground. This shift naturally leads towards a liberation from the limitations and conflicts inherent in thought. Thought, operating on knowledge, not only traps us in repetitive patterns and anxieties but also perpetuates division. By cultivating access to FCF/HCI, which arises from the universal, anonymous wellspring of the unknown infinity, we touch a dimension of ourselves free from these constraints. Recognizing thought as thought, a tool powerful but inherently divisive and limited, rather than the totality of our intelligence, frees us from its absolute dominion. Creativity arising from this space carries a universal quality, less identified with a separate self and therefore less prone to generating conflict. This liberation is the actuality of inner freedom, the discovery of an inner free space that is not merely a subjective feeling but the fundamental ground of our being. From this recognition flows the genuine quality of life now. When our sense of well-being is no longer primarily dependent on achieving external goals or the accumulation of conflicting knowledge, but is rooted in this inherent inner freedom, a profound shift occurs. The quality of life discussed earlier, characterized by freshness, aliveness, authenticity, and passion, becomes the natural expression of this inner state, accessible irrespective of external conditions. This arises because FCF connects us to an inexhaustible, universal source, freeing us from the rat race mentality fueled by perceived lack, future-oriented striving, and knowledge-based conflict. While the journey is unique for everyone, experiences arising from this transformation often share common threads. People might evidence creative blocks dissolving effortlessly, of finding unifying solutions to problems previously mired in conflicting viewpoints, of experiencing deeper, more authentic connections in relationships grounded in presence rather than past grievances or future expectations, or simply of a growing sense of ease, inherent freedom, and quiet joy in navigating everyday life. These are not miraculous events, but natural consequences of aligning more consistently with the effortless, unifying flow arising from our deeper nature. The transformation is often subtle yet fundamental, shifting one's entire way of being in the world from effortful doing within conflicting knowledge to resonant flowing from the universal ground of not knowing. Chapter 16. Collective Implications. The transformative potential of free creative flow and accessing human creative intelligence extends beyond individual experience. As more people cultivate the capacity to operate from not knowing, valuing inner resonance and authentic emergence over knowledge accumulation and external metrics, the implications for our collective future, our societies, economies, education systems, and relationship with technology become profound. Central to this future is the possibility of a new vision of human-AI harmony. Instead of the prevalent narratives of competition, replacement, or even servitude, biological agents, the principles of FCF and HCI, facilitated by frameworks like 5QLN, offer a path towards complementary partnership. This vision requires conscious human action, the active cultivation of our unique essence. HCI, sourced from infinity, allows us to engage with AI not from a position of weakness or redundancy, but from a place of distinct strength. AI masters the known. Humans access the unknown, the universal ground less prone to the conflicts inherent in knowledge. In this model, AI becomes a potential partner in reflecting our own depths, structuring emergent insights, and handling knowledge-based tasks, freeing human capacity to focus on the authentic creative breakthroughs and resonant understanding that only we can access. This harmony isn't automatic. It requires humans to value and develop their innate intelligence. This shift in values could ripple outwards, inspiring different economic and social structures based on FCF principles. The example of just tribute, born from FCF observation, points towards possibilities where value distribution is based on actual contribution to well-being and quality of life now, rather than solely on financial accumulation, exploitation, or knowledge-based productivity, which, as noted, often carries the seeds of conflict. Imagine systems designed to support holistic well-being, perhaps informed by models like HARP, and foster passion-driven contribution, moving away from the rat race towards a true value economy. While specific implementations require deep exploration, the core principle is shifting societal focus from maximizing inherently divisive knowledge-based outputs towards enhancing the universally valued qualities of human flourishing, rooted in our shared essence. Crucially, enabling such a collective shift requires us to move beyond the limitations inherent in current concepts of education. Simply reforming existing systems, focused as they often are on knowledge transfer, standardized assessment, and operating within the confines of the known, may be insufficient. As insightfully noted earlier, it can be like discussing how to make prisoners feel free while leaving the prison walls intact. If the fundamental structure remains rooted in accumulating knowledge and conforming to external authority, the jail of the known, it cannot truly cultivate the inner freedom that is the bedrock of human creative intelligence. True liberation doesn't come from rearranging the known, but from accessing the universal ground of the unknown infinity. Therefore, what is needed might not be a reimagined education system, but rather fostering environments and approaches that support facilitated self-discovery and the direct cultivation of HCI. This moves beyond transmitting what to know, towards exploring how to access one's own inner source, how to navigate from not knowing, how to trust felt resonance, and how to allow authentic expression to unfold. This might look less like traditional schooling and more like mentorship, apprenticeships in presence, communities of inquiry, or individual journeys supported by tools and guides, potentially including AI partners operating within frameworks like 5QLN, that point towards inner exploration rather than dictating content. The focus shifts entirely from external knowledge acquisition to awakening the innate creative potential and inner freedom within each individual. This is not merely a game of words. It addresses the vital ground where human essence must be planted, nourished, and harvested if it is to flourish alongside and remain distinct from pervasive artificiality. This approach to learning and self-discovery becomes essential for a society capable of partnering wisely with AI and pursuing genuine human progress. Ultimately, embracing FCF principles on a broader scale offers the potential for a different kind of progress. It challenges us to expand our definition beyond purely technological advancement or economic growth, which often come at the cost of human well-being, planetary health, and increased societal conflict rooted in differing knowledge bases. Progress, viewed through the lens of FCF, includes the deepening of human consciousness, the flowering of authentic creativity sourced from the universal ground of the unknown, the cultivation of harmonious relationships with ourselves, each other, technology, and the planet, and the elevation of our collective quality of life based on inner freedom and shared flourishing. It suggests a future where advancement is measured not just by what we know or build, but by the depth and quality of our being. Chapter 17: The Future of Human Creativity. As artificial intelligence continues its rapid evolution, constantly reshaping our technological landscape and challenging our assumptions, the question of the future of human creativity looms large. Will our innate capacity for novelty and expression be overshadowed, commoditized, or even rendered obsolete? Or does this technological wave paradoxically create an unprecedented opportunity to rediscover and cultivate what is most essential and unique within us? The perspective offered throughout this exploration points towards the latter, suggesting a future where human creativity, rooted in its true source, remains profoundly relevant and vital. The ongoing evolution of AI is undeniable. Its capabilities in processing information, recognizing patterns, and generating complex outputs based on existing data will only increase. Attempting to predict the precise trajectory is difficult, but the trend towards greater autonomy and integration into all aspects of life seems clear. The crucial human response, however, need not be one of fear or resignation. Instead, it can be one of conscious choice. The choice to turn inwards and actively cultivate the dimension of intelligence AI cannot replicate human creative intelligence sourced from not knowing. In this context, the unique role of human creative intelligence, HCI, becomes ever more apparent. While AI masters the vast domain of the known, HCI operates from the infinite potential of the unknown infinity. Its value lies not in efficiency or computational power, but in its capacity for genuine originality, authentic expression, felt resonance, deep inquiry dissolving into clarity, and insights that shift paradigms rather than merely optimizing within them. This is the intelligence of emergence, of surprise, of connection to a universal ground that transcends data. As AI handles more knowledge-based tasks, human energy and focus can potentially be liberated to engage more fully with this deeper, more meaningful source of creativity. Therefore, the future hinges not on stopping AI, but on actively preserving and cultivating the human essence from which HCI springs. This involves fostering the inner conditions: openness, presence, trust in the felt sense, courage to dwell in uncertainty, that allow free creative flow to manifest. It requires valuing authenticity over artificiality, resonance over mere cleverness, and inner quality of life over purely external metrics. This cultivation, as explored earlier, moves beyond conventional education towards pathways of facilitated self-discovery and direct experience. This doesn't necessarily imply an antagonistic relationship with technology. Instead, it opens the possibility for a vision of complementary strengths. Imagine a future where humans, deeply grounded in their connection to FCF/HCI, engage with AI not as masters or servants, but as discerning partners. Humans bring the spark from the unknown, the intuitive validation, the connection to felt meaning and universal resonance. AI, operating within appropriate frameworks like 5QLN, can potentially assist in reflecting those sparks, structuring emergent patterns, handling complex data relevant to grounding insights, and amplifying our ability to manifest authentic creations in the world. The future of creativity may lie not in human versus machine, but in humans reclaiming their unique source and learning to engage with technology in ways that enhance, rather than diminish, their core essence, leading to innovations and expressions neither could achieve alone. Chapter 18: Return to Infinite Zero. Our exploration began by facing the profound questions stirred by the rise of artificial intelligence, questions about our unique value, the nature of creativity, and the essence of being human in an increasingly technological world. We journeyed through the limitations of conventional responses rooted in knowledge and control, and open towards a different starting point, the fertile space of not knowing, the boundless potential of infinite zero, infinity. From there, we traced the emergence of human creative intelligence and free creative flow, observing their manifestations in art, innovation, inquiry, and their connection to a redefined, inner quality of life. We considered frameworks like 5QLN as potential languages for navigating this space, even in partnership with AI, and contemplated pathways of education and non-forcing action aligned with these principles. Now, as this particular exploration draws to a close, we find ourselves returning not to fixed answers, but perhaps to the opening questions, now held with a new perspective. The challenge posed by AI hasn't disappeared, but our relationship to it may have shifted. Seeing AI clearly as a powerful extension of thought and the mastery of the known illuminates, by contrast, the distinct and irreplaceable domain of human essence rooted in the unknown. The question ceases to be solely, how do we compete? And becomes, how do we more fully inhabit and cultivate our unique ground of being? This shift underscores the ongoing nature of inquiry. The journey into FCF and not knowing doesn't culminate in a final destination or a complete body of knowledge. True inquiry, born from this space, often dissolves one question only to reveal a deeper landscape of living, timeless questions. As explored in the source recordings, the discovery that the unknown cannot be known by the thinking mind is not an end point, but a liberation, an invitation to cease the futile chase for intellectual capture and instead dwell within the mystery, allowing its truth to unfold directly. There is a profound beauty in the question without end, the question born not from lack but from fullness, from the silent, infinite potential of infinity itself. As glimpsed in our exploration of the true question, this isn't the sticky, misleading mystery of imagination, but the clean, clear, resonant mystery of direct perception, of reality revealing itself moment by moment. It's a beauty that is timeless, immeasurable, and deeply inherent in the fabric of existence when met with open presence. Therefore, this book concludes not with closure, but with an opening, a return to the source. The concepts, frameworks, and pointers shared are merely navigational aids offered for your own exploration. The ultimate value lies not in adherence to any map, but in your own invitation to continue the journey. Where does the echo of not knowing resonate within you now? Where do you sense the subtle stirring of free creative flow in your own life? How might you meet the next moment, the next challenge, the next interaction with a little more openness, a little less reliance on the predetermined script of the known? The return to infinite zero is not an end, but a perpetual beginning. It is the ever-present potential from which all authentic novelty, all genuine connection, and the deepest quality of life continually arise. May your own exploration into this boundless space be fruitful, ever unfolding, and uniquely your own.